My number one advice is don't ask for permission to do something. Like, just do it. Especially for women, I think we believe someone's going to tell us we can do it rather than just doing it. I definitely do that too. And so I think from today, like, you just have to stop asking for permission and just do it. Whether that's emailing someone, starting a company, going freelance, like, just do it.
Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by Hollie Fraser. Hollie is a freelance creative director, the founder of We Are Shelance, and she's doing an awful lot in the world at the moment. So Hollie, go ahead, introduce yourself and tell me what you're up to.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm a freelance creative director. I've been living in New York for the last 8 years, and I'm going into my 4th year of freelance. And so I guess I'm a professional freelancer now. I think that's the title I want to give myself, because freelancers get a lot of flack, really. Like, maybe they've dropped out or maybe they've been laid off. And so I'm really pushing the agenda for freelancers. And that's kind of what inspired me to start We Are Shelance. Just noticing that there's far more men, unfortunately, in the advertising industry still, and trying to get females more visibility and connect more women in the industry as well.
Well, Hollie, I love that. And I wish you every success with We Are Shelance going forward, because I know it's a new endeavor. It's a really exciting thing for you to be leading the charge on. And I can't wait to see that grow and succeed and flourish. But the thing that I'm most excited about, of course, is the fact that you are sitting on your sofa. You've made it to Strategy Shorts, which I consider a pinnacle in anyone's career. So congratulations.
Thank
But
you.
all jokes aside, you mentioned there that being laid off was part of your story and part of your experience with going freelance. And I wondered if you could just talk us through that experience. And when we were speaking before this call, you mentioned that sometimes being laid off or being made redundant can be a silver lining because it creates opportunities. So talk us through what that was like when you first stepped into going freelance for the first time, making a brave step that wasn't your decision, but one that you decided to run with.
So the first time I went freelance, I mean, taking a step back, I did 2 years of, I guess, what we'd call placements in the ad industry, but like internships where they just kind of paid you like maybe what they decided they would pay you, everything from like 70 quid a week to, I think the most I got paid was 200 quid a week. And I literally thought I was rolling in it. And so I did that for 2 years before I got my first job. And then 18 months after landing my first job, they closed the London office. And so laid everyone off in the London office. And it was like, I mean, I felt hideous. I was like, I don't know if I can go through this again. What am I going to do? So obviously then considered myself not a graduate anymore, but like a freelancer. And I would never have left that agency after 18 months. I was desperately trying to make this career work. But it definitely was very different. It was a small agency and I was given a lot of hats. And I think actually when I went freelance, I very luckily, and I can't remember how, I ended up freelancing at Lear Burnett London. And it turned into a full-time job. And I ended up staying there 4 years and absolutely loving it, loving the clients I worked on, winning quite a few pitches and getting to work with some really great people. And my boss at the time was amazing and I loved working for him. And so I left there to go to New York, which was very, very hard, because it was one of those agencies that feels like it's your family. And when I got to New York, yeah, again, freelancing because I was trying to figure out how to make it in a new city. I ended up at Grey, where I stayed for a year until they lost a ton of business. And I think it was a case of last in, first out deal. So all the new hires pretty much got laid off. So I was back to the drawing board after a year in New York, freelancing again, but made some really good connections at Grey, like met some really great people. So started trying to reach out to all of those people. And yeah, I think the silver lining of the second layoff was that I knew from working at Leo Burnett the types of briefs I wanted to work on. And I knew from being at Grey that wasn't what I was getting. And so I was like, okay, I need to try and focus on this unicorn agency. And I ended up freelancing at the Brooklyn Brothers, and they'd just been acquired by Golin, which is a PR company. And so I started hearing all these murmurs of earned media, and we got this pitch for this ice cream brand, and it really had to be focused on earned media. So I started to understand the PR landscape more. And the next freelance job I got after that was at a pure PR agency. And I just would not have considered a PR agency. I wouldn't have quit a full-time job to go to a PR agency. Like, I knew that there was a lot of, like, questions in my head, like, am I doing damage to my career being in PR? Like, am I now shoehorning myself into PR and out of creative? And honestly, it was the best. I ended up again staying at that agency for 4 years full time because I got my foot in the door freelance, and the kind of briefs and brands I got to work on were on a par with the ad agencies. We were kind of put head to head with a lot of ad agencies and ended up winning work from them, which felt even better in many ways. And I got to work on PR, talkable, earned media ideas and realized, like, that is what I love doing. And so every time I approach an agency now, I approach it with that earned media lens. And whether it's just luck and the way the trends have gone, but most briefs I feel now, even at the big traditional agencies, want want talkability. They want earned media. They want something that's going to get headlines. Nobody just wants, like, the TV ads anymore. So I realized, like, both of those losses and losing those jobs became huge gains to my career. Um, and I wouldn't be where I am today without them. And then I did actually decide to leave the PR agency to go freelance. So I went into freelance this time with a slightly different mindset of, like, I am looking to create and build a different lifestyle and shape of career. Um, so it was a slightly different mindset.
I think it's so important for loads of our listeners who are going through. Last year was very, very difficult for a lot of people in work. There were lots of layoffs across industries. And I think what you've been talking us through will just be a real encouragement to so many who just need to hear that, this might open up new surprising doors. It might open up new career paths that you weren't expecting, or give you new ways to recycle your skills into new spaces so you can make some of those changes, capitalize on some of those opportunities, and perhaps take advantage of the opportunity that you've been given. So I think it's a really, really great story. And the point there about earned media, I think, is also really important for people to hold on to, because all brands can spend their way to the top. You can spend your way to notoriety. You can pay for enough ad placements if you've got those kind of budgets. But the thing is that everyone can do that. So, of course, not everybody, but big brands can do that. And actually, the real gold, the really exciting stuff is in the stories that you can tell, into the headlines that you can make, into the emotional connections that you can break through with people. That's the kind of stuff that is really, really exciting for brands. So if you are in that freelancer space and you're pitching for work, try and find those heartfelt stories, those emotional connections, those things that are really going to land with people. Because it can't just be about ads, it can't just be about spend. It's got to be about something more exciting than that. Now, one of the reasons why I'm so glad that we've got you on as a guest is because we're going to be talking about two things. We sort of touched on the first already, which is about being brave and dealing with loss and kind of making the most of the opportunities that come your way. And the second is really about networking and how to maintain your sanity when you are in a situation where you're feeling isolated or you're a freelancer. But let's go back to the first one there about being brave, because you wrote a great LinkedIn post the other day about what you lose when you become a freelancer, but also what you can gain. So talk us through that and what you were getting at.
Well, I think when I decided to go freelance, the choice was based on I had 2 young kids. So I feel like I'd already grieved a lot my past life and the freedom I had. And so I felt like I'd already lost a lot. So I I really wanted to create a lifestyle that gave me more time with my kids, but also more flexibility around them. Like, I want to work as much. Like, I actually love work. Like, I could never see myself being a stay-at-home parent. I really wanted to get back to work, but I also wanted to be able to, like, take my kid to the doctor or pick them up from school. And so in leaving a full-time job, you obviously lose that stable income, which can be worrying. And I now map out or do a projection for the year, like, what do you need to earn? Like, what's your base salary? And then do like a dream projection of what would you like to earn. And as the year progresses, I can keep track of that and know that even if I have a month off, I'm still on track for what I need that year. So that is really helpful. But also, like, I just feel like I gained so much in being able to work with multiple agencies over the course of a year, meeting different people, constantly connecting with different people. And it's not to say like you have to be a social butterfly, like it can happen naturally. It happens anytime you start working with a new company. Um, I definitely try not to sit back too much and be kind of like an invisible freelancer. I definitely chat to people and make like good connections with them because that is really the bread and butter of freelance, where you get your next jobs from, like where you kind of pick up the next client, either being asked back or someone recommends you. So I think the other loss I talked about was I actually left New York City, which was a big decision because I absolutely loved it. And if you told me, 5 years ago, are you going anywhere? I'd have hands down said no. But I wanted a bigger house, more space, closer to the grandparents for my kids. And so I know from losing, the vibrancy of New York, I've gained pretty wholesome, pretty cliche, wholesome hallmark scenario at the moment. But I always say, and I remind myself, like, nothing is permanent. And like, this is right for right now. And this is right for me and the age my kids are now. So I'm enjoying it for what it is. But as I talk to you, I'm a bit of a sun chaser. So maybe I'll be moving somewhere else soon.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. Everybody needs some sun, right? What you've just been talking us through reminds me of a graph that I saw recently. It was more like an illustration of someone's lifeline, as if it was mapped onto a graph. And sometimes when you focus right in on one point of the graph, you might be on a downward trend or a moment where your life is taking a dip through redundancy, through some kind of loss, through some kind of pain. And the encouragement, the main message, I can't remember how it was worded, but it was reminding the viewer to zoom out to see the whole graph and realize that even though you might be experiencing a down, you're actually all the way up here compared to the progress that you've made over a long period of time. And I guess that's so important that if you are moving or you've lost a job or you've lost a client or you're experiencing some kind of pain point, that
Mm.
as you say, remember that things do change, like things aren't permanent, that try and take a broader perspective and see where you are within a wider context. And remember that those silver linings do have a habit of showing up and presenting themselves to you. Now, the other thing you mentioned as part of that is networking and about connecting with people in different agencies. And I think you've got an idea here around how freelancers can look after their sanity and make sure they don't get too isolated in this crazy world of work. So tell us what you had in mind there.
I think I coined it my sanity strategy. And it's something I really started doing last year. And I think however good or also however bad your career is, I feel like everybody needs this because one thing you lose when you go from an agency life to freelancers, colleagues, is that constant, the same people you see every day. You have your friend in the office you moan to or you chat to, you get the gossip and you don't have that freelance. And I can even say myself, like when it is quiet and you're questioning, where is my next job coming from? It can get really, really hard and lonely. And so my sanity strategy is, I would say pick about 4 people, 2 to 4, and they can either be like old colleagues or friends. But I pick people who yeah, are in the same industry, in the same headset, trying to achieve the same thing, and we're kind of like all on the same journey. And so we have like monthly to 6 weekly check-ins, like virtual coffees, and we just basically talk about anything, mainly work, sometimes life, sometimes we moan, sometimes we laugh. I don't think there's been any crying yet, but I'm sure there will be. And so I have my little group of people. Erin, I spoke to yesterday, and yesterday was the day I needed to speak to Erin. And my friend Alex, who's a producer. And so I have these key people who we make sure like we connect now, and talk about what we're gonna do. And Alex also loves to manifest what she's gonna do. So she's like, we need to manifest this and make it happen. So you can kind of take on other people's strategies as well for when times get hard.
I think that's such an important thing for people to hold on to in both settings that we've discussed. You've got the personal connection, networking, and making sure that you've got friends and champions and advocates around you who are holding you up, I guess sometimes calling you out if things aren't very clear, but also sharing what they're doing with you so you can perhaps beg, borrow, and steal some of their bright ideas. And on the flip side of that, you've got this professional networking stuff where it's like, make sure you reach out to the person who you worked with at that agency at that time, or the client who was once really impressed with how you showed up and you wowed them with the presentation. Yes, you might not have spoken to them in a while, but just drop them a message on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm doing this now. Do you fancy having a cup of coffee sometime and just catching up? What's the worst they can say is no. So you've got to put yourself out there and try and make those kind of connections and bring some of those old connections back to life. And then on the friends side, we've got this great message around lean on a small group of trusted advisors who know the journey that you're on, and just share the strain with them, I guess, share the burden with them, because you're all in this period of uncertainty and you're all trying to get stuff done. So why don't you try and get it done together a little bit? I think that is just wonderful. And I think sanity strategy is probably the right word, because I know that isolation for a lot of people in
Mhm.
in our shoes, starting new businesses or freelancing, that is a real issue and challenge for a lot of us. So I think that's a really wise way of putting it. Now, we love, Holly, to finish these episodes with something really practical, tangible, something that people can do as soon as the episode finishes. And you may have said it already, it might be to do with this networking with a few key friends that you've already mentioned. But what would be your advice if you wanted to inspire somebody to take action today, to make a move, to improve something? What would that be and why?
I was speaking to someone about females starting up agencies the other day, and I think her question was like, why are there not more women? And I think my number one advice is don't ask for permission to do something. Like, just do it. Especially for women, I think we believe someone's going to tell us we can do it, rather than just doing it. And I definitely do that too. Um, and so I think from today, like, you just have to stop asking for permission and just do it. Whether that's emailing someone, starting a company, going freelance, like, just do it.
Well, Holly, that just about brings us into land time wise for today's episode. But it's been so nice to meet you. And I'm really excited about We Are Shelance and what you're doing for the female community of freelancers. And I'll be watching closely and wishing you every success as you stride forward. But thank you so much for making some time for the show. And let's speak again soon.
Thank you for having me.